Good evening, everyone. We are going to call the City Commission workshop for Monday, March 22nd, 2021 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Villa Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner King. Here. Commissioner McCool.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Sosa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bradford.
Here.
Mayor Hersberg.
Here, and may we all please stand for a pledge to the flag? Commissioner King, would you like to lead us? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this evening we have two items of business on the agenda. The first item is a review of the compensation study by the Archer Group, and the second item is going to be the commission review of the context analysis report and draft strategic plan. So this evening we're going to go ahead and begin with the compensation study. Commissioners, you should all have a copy. It was also online. Mr. Peters?
Yes, ma'am. We have Rita Archer from the Archer Group here tonight to do a short presentation. This is preliminary information. What we're hoping to do is come back to the commission the second meeting in April with a more defined plan for our commission consideration and hopefully approval at that time. It's important to remember that this compensation study came out of the last collective bargaining agreement with the fire department. The city chose to expand it to include all city personnel, not just the fire department. So Ms. Archer will be going over that particular study.
Okay, great. And commissioners, if you have any questions when she is done, just light up the board. Oh, can you just pull your mic closer, please? Thank you.
We started back in October, and this is the culmination of about 5 months of work. A little bit about our company. We've been doing this for about 30 years. Dr. Archer started this company, and he's fine-tuned this procedure over many, many studies. It's been employed in about 1,500 different organizations. I'm Rita Archer. I'm an engineer by background with an MBA, and what's important to you is that I'm a certified compensation professional. So the city contracted with us to do our most popular services, the compensation and classification study. The objective of it is for a valid, objective, and reliable pay structure. It's good for a competitive advantage in attracting and retaining employees. It's in line with the Fair Labor Standards Act, Civil Rights Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Equal Pay Act. So basically, we're going to take two pieces of information. It's internal equity to make it fair, and external equity to make it competitive. This is the big picture of the approach that we use, but what you should take away from this slide is that it's a study that's specialized to your city. So we take a lot of client input, and that was from the beginning and then along the way, and then finally at the end we have this draft report, but it's going to be tailored to you. So in the beginning, there's 3 things going on. The Archer Company is learning about the city. We read your budget, your collective bargaining agreement. We looked at your org charts and your job descriptions. The employees are filling out questionnaires based on their job. It's supposed to be as if somebody else held the job. We're not looking at individuals. We're looking at the job itself.
Excuse me, Mayor, is that part of the package? What she's showing up there, because I can't find it.
No, this is just a presentation to explain the narrative that you have. I think you have some slides in the back with the market survey of the benefits, but these are just going over the first 5 or 6 pages of the narrative, where it says methodology. So basically, a job evaluation takes into account the 3 basic factors of any job. You could compare every job to every other job because every job has a component of human interaction, data utilization, and use of machinery, tools, and equipment. And then basically, each job could be further broken down into verbal and mathematical requirements and situational and functional reasoning, physical requirements like dexterity and actual physical strength and sensory requirements, then education and experience, and finally environment. So in addition to these basic components of every job, if the job requires supervisory or managerial portions, there's a factor that goes into span of control, and that's how many people that you would supervise, budgetary impact, and then planning time frame, or what we call time span of discretion. And after we evaluated all the jobs, we came back to the directors and the HR department, and we said, does this make sense? So it wasn't totally numbers, even though the numbers give us a basic job order hierarchy. We put in a subjective overview from the department heads. And then finally, there's another check at the end when we match the job evaluation points with the market survey. So this is a little bit about what the program looks like, but you could see all the numbers that go into filling out this job evaluation, and it's a good way to make a numerical rating for the words that go into a job description or these questionnaires that the employees fill out. At the same time that we were evaluating the jobs and analyzing the city's structure and everything, we were also doing a salary and benefits survey in the local area with the organizations that were listed in the collective bargaining agreement. And then finally, we put them all together and we came out with a pay plan. These are just a quick picture of the pay grades that we determined were similar in complexity. So we say similar pay for similar work and similar pay for the same complexity of work, even if it's totally different. This is where I'm going to discuss what we need from you. We need client input to set the parameters in the program. Like that was a lot of pay grades. Sometimes we use 25 points to make a pay grade. Sometimes we set the pay grades wider. We have a recommended pay range that's usually around 50%, but it'll be up to you to say whether you want to move it higher or lower, or it's not set in stone. This is just a draft report to give you a picture of where we are with all the data that we gathered, but we will set it the way you want it. So this is a summary of the market analysis. We compiled data from 12 peer organizations that were listed in the collective bargaining agreement. You can see there is Deltona in the middle, circled in blue, and then we have the cities of Apopka, Daytona Beach, Gainesville, Kissimmee, Lake Mary, Orlando, Ormond Beach, Port Orange, and Sanford. And then over to the right, I tried to show the counties that we surveyed. It's Brevard, Seminole, and Volusia. So we're here today to show you where we are and to ask, what's the compensation philosophy of the city? Where do you want to place your pay range midpoint? And where do you want to set the ranges in order to fit in with your budget and other constraints? So this is basically the benchmark jobs that we surveyed, and every blue dot pretty much represents job evaluation points matched with the salary in the local market. And then finally, we drew what we call a pay line, which is the midpoint of the pay structure. And then from there, we're going to take your input to work with the numbers that we have and see what we need to do to make it perfect for your city. So if you like, I can go through these. These are in your packet. It's part of the report. But in the interest of time, if you'd rather ask questions about the salary study, I will stop here.
I think let's go through some questions. Vice Mayor Bradford is on the board, and then if you need to bring this up to discuss any of it or clarify, that would be great. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, the number one thing, just how did you come up with the cities? Are these cities in comparison in size to the city of Deltona?
So they were used in previous studies for the city of Deltona, and the collective bargaining agreement listed them out.
Okay.
And the HR said, yeah, those are the ones they'd like to use.
Okay, because I guess my biggest concern when I was reading through this was I don't want to see anybody below the minimum. When I see somebody below the minimum, it kind of is heart-wrenching to see that. So myself personally going through this, and we can talk about this after if you want, was, number one priority is everybody needs to be at least to that minimum, and then we need to figure out how, we get the rest to that midpoint if we can't just jump them up. I mean, obviously, we're talking a lot of money and strategy, but I'm going to let you finish your report. I just wanted, my number one question was, how did you select the cities? And then we can go back to some of these other questions I had.
Well, the cities were done as part of the collective bargaining
Yeah, that's what she
agreement.
said, yeah.
Yeah, and they're listed in the collective bargaining agreement. And that's, and they were done at that time in their contract that we
No,
approved.
that's fine. I just
So-
wanted to make it clear, because I know other individuals are going to have that same question, is how did we select the cities, and were they comparable? And thank you for answering that.
Very good.
Commissioner McCool?
Yeah, and reading through the package too, I wanted to see if I understood, when we were talking about moving with the COLA to get the distribution up to all the minimums, was it 3% across the board that we were talking about, and what is the time period to raise that? I just want to understand the methodology for raising
Okay,
those
so-
minimums.
I think this first phase would be to bring all employees at least to the minimum, and those that have been with the city for 0 to 7 years into the range, so that if you were with the city for 7 years, you would be at the midpoint and appropriately based on years. And I think that cost was nearly 4%, 3.71, I think is the page 70 of the report. So that's our basic recommendation. And then the last exhibit, or I think it's the appendix, is about the $15 minimum wage. And that's just saying that you shouldn't go below that, because facing this $15 minimum wage, it's just going to be adding to the major implementation that's going to happen in 5 years.
And we talked about achieving that and bringing the cost of living up, correct? To how to work our way up
Right,
to
generally,
that.
we would say to look at the historic consumer price index and the employment cost index. And generally, they have been running about 2%, but in order to get to this $15 minimum wage, we're looking at probably closer to 3.5% or 4% per year going forward.
And did we talk about how we are prioritizing how do we prioritize getting the employees up to that out of the bottom and up to the mid-range? How do we prioritize that in terms of departments? I mean, I don't.
That's usually done on merit pay kind of budget, where not only do you move the whole structure with the cost of living, and you move each individual with the cost of living, and that's pretty much just staying even. And then if they were meeting expectations, they should be moving towards the midpoint, and that's what we call a merit increase. Sometimes it's just an overall increase when the city chooses not to do it based on merit, but rather based on time.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, it might be for Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters, how is the salary of Deltona employees identified? Is there a gray level, or is it just salary dollar amount? When I say gray level, so let's say grade 35 has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. So grade 35 could be a low pay to a middle pay to the highest pay. Is that how we identify here in Deltona?
Okay, kind of following what Ms. Archer said, the first thing we were trying to do is get the minimum to where it is competitive at the minimum rate. And then the second thing is to avoid what we call compression. We wanted to have people fall, the adjustments fall between the minimum and the midpoint based on how long you've been working in the position.
But is there a grade, is there a specific grade level? So in other words, there's different grades. I'm, coming from where I used to work, we had grade levels for exempt employees and grade levels for regular staff. So 35 level would be for, say, somebody who's doing coding, but it starts from, say, 10,000. The mid-grade would be 50, and then the high grade would be 100,000, but it's still grade 35.
Correct.
So that's what I'm trying to understand, how it's done
Okay.
here in Deltona.
All right, with the pay grades, and I'm going to let Ms. Archer correct me if I'm wrong here, but she gave us a very extensive sheet to describe our jobs. The one that stood out for me as an engineer, she must have written it because she's an engineer, but, on the math scale, does your work require calculus down to does your work require adding and subtraction? And I'm sure that in that program that she has, that effectively puts you toward a certain depth in the process. And there are a number of questions, what computer skills you need to do to your job, how much public interaction do you have? There's a whole host of things that within that questionnaire that went to every employee in the city. And from that information, they made recommendations as to what pay scale each person should be. And that's spelled out in one of her last slides she just showed you, where, level 11 through 35 or whatever. And the positions that most mimic each other in terms of the responsibilities as outlined in that survey that each of the employees did. Now, that being said, we've been doing some internal reviews with the directors and staff, and we may come back to you with some tweaks in there. For instance, some of the field people sound similar, but one may be an 11 and one may be a 13. I've got a manager in stormwater that is 4 or 5 steps below a public works manager. We need to take a look at that. But we'll be looking at those type things to make some minor adjustments, mainly so that we can remain competitive or actually become competitive. We're not competitive right now based on the turnover rates that we're seeing in certain positions.
Commissioner Vasquez, if you look at page 38 on this thing, this is where you have your pay grades all the way from 1 to 75, correct? And you have your minimum, midpoint, maximum, and your evaluation points range. It's all part of the packet on page 38. Is that correct, ma'am?
That's correct. And we don't use all those pay grades. I think your lowest paid part-timer is a grade 8. Nobody is in grade 1, 2, 3, 4. And then your first full-timer is in grade 10. And then I don't think we use above 54 for any of the jobs here. We could cut that down and make it look neater, but I mean, this is
And
just
if
the
you, and if
first
you
one.
also go through portions of this study, which I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and I'll give the page numbers, for example, you will see the employee, the job code and title, the pay grade, and the minimum, midpoint, and maximum, and then their salary. So, Vice Mayor, did you have a question, or do you want me to go? What do you? Go ahead. Okay, so in looking over this, and it's a lot of data and I think you did this very well. It's easy to understand and work through. I just have a few questions. Looking at this, what really stands out to me, and Mr. Peters, I'm going to ask you this question, are we bleeding employees at the lower level? Are we losing employees at the lower level?
We are losing quite a few employees at the lower level, especially in the 11 through 13, 14 range.
What I see here, I don't understand some of this from a city that has been in existence 25 years, how you can have one department where your director is above the maximum and every other employee in that department doesn't meet minimum. I mean, I don't understand how that was never brought forward to anyone's attention in terms of management, HR, anything. And then we wonder when we train people and they leave. So, I mean, that is, you can see that for yourself on, let me find the page here. That would be on page 44. You want to look into that department. Then what this also says to me is this is a result of the lack of evaluations. This is a result of lack of evaluations. You have a customer service supervisor. You have two customer service supervisors. One is a pay grade 21 and one is a pay grade 20. Your pay grade 20 is making almost $15,000 more than your pay grade 21 as a customer service supervisor. Just, I mean, huge disparity. And then if we look at comparable jobs in Parks and Rec, there are individuals there with a pay grade 11, comparable job in Stormwater, they get a pay grade 13. So all these things, to me, have to be equalized if we are going to keep any employees. And the other question that I have, and this probably is for you, Mr. Peters. Let me find my page here. Apologize. Had them all marked. We go to page 47, which is the Planning and Development Services Department. And we look toward the bottom of that, you have, the top group is, they don't need an adjustment, and then you go to the bottom three, the last one is vacant. They're all three not at min, and that is the HCD housing coordinators and then one admin. Are those not paid by grants? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
As I understand it, they're paid by SHIP, CDBG, and the CARES Act.
That is correct.
If they're paid by grants, and I understand when we run out of grant funding, the general fund picks up those three, the rest of the cost of those three positions. And one of those people just left for salary. I don't understand how we have grant-funded positions that are not even at the minimum. And again, we lost a really good employee because that individual went to another agency, another municipality, another county for pay in a better position because it took too long here to even move up to the next level. So we have a fundamental problem of people leaving this city. Not at the top, because if you notice, almost every director is at over the min, absolutely over the min, almost to the max. Some are over the max. Certainly not a pay problem at the top, but we got a pay problem at the bottom. And that's very, very, very troubling to me because we continue to train people and then they leave. Vice Mayor Bradford?
I was going to save mine so I didn't sound harsh, but you did a great job. So since you brought it up, I'll go through some of the list. Our performance reviews going to be done prior to any of these raises being given out whatsoever. And I know, Mr. Peters, this is not something that you did. I know that we went years without performance reviews by prior management, but I think it's critical that performance reviews are even done before even a minimum adjustment is completed. That's one.
You want me to answer the
You want to
question?
answer? Yeah, you can go ahead and answer that one. That seems like an easy one.
We have started performance reviews. They are up to date, the last I checked. The intention was to get everything done by April, get caught up. And then we will have performance reviews this October. I do not think we have enough time, nor the staff, to implement what I would prefer and what Ms. Archer has already said, which is having merit-based performance reviews that has a component that is a COLA and then a component that is based on your performance. Where I was employed previously, I wrote a spreadsheet that ensures that the merit stays within budget. One of the problems historically in communities with merit-based evaluation is you suddenly end up with a lot of outstanding and excellent employees, so they get much higher pay raises than just doing your job. The reason I wrote the spreadsheet was because when I was at Altamont, we were having trouble with, we would budget 3.5% for increases, and they were coming in at 4 and 4.5%. Kind of puts you in the hole real quick with the budget. So this spreadsheet basically creates a bell curve. The area under the curve is 3.5% of everybody's salaries. And then when you put the person on the bell curve, it would fit to where the dollar amount got distributed. The other thing that was done there was if you had a major write-up, insubordination or something like that, you didn't get a merit increase. If you were a probationary employee, you didn't get a merit increase. So there was extra money in the pot from those people. So even at a 3.5% budget, the typical average employee would get somewhere between 4 and 4.2% raise. But the really good employees sometimes got 5.5%, so they were compensated for being very good. On the other hand, somebody that had the major write-up got 0. I think I wrote that program in 99, 2000. They still use it. And there's 6 other communities that are using that spreadsheet. And that's what I want to implement here. But we need a little time getting used to doing an evaluation. So my goal is this October, we will continue with the form we have. But by the following October, we will be into a full merit-based evaluation.
Okay. And I'm going to kind of condense it because, Madam Mayor, you really hit, going through this, I don't know how we have some staff that are still here. I would not be here working for what we are paying some of these individuals. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed what we're starting staff off at. We have them dealing with, and it seems like the lowest paid are the ones who are dealing with the public. There are customer service reps. They're the people that are in full contact that we need them to be excited and proud of their job and to work for the city, and they're the ones that are paid the lowest. I don't know how they're living. I'm embarrassed. And it needs to be balanced out. The mayor's right. This is sad. When I went through this yesterday, I went through it a couple times, and I'm just like, I've got to be reading this wrong. Are we really expecting people to live on this? I could live on it. So, I mean, this is something that we've got to get fixed, and we've got to get it rectified. And I think that by bringing the people up to the minimum, and we want them to care about their customers, the residents, but yet we're not caring for them. And it comes from us. It comes from the top. So it's very important that we are taking care of these customer service staff. You know, I don't want to keep hitting a dead horse, but it's got to be fixed, and it's got to be fixed pretty quickly in order to have the customer service that the residents need and that we expect them to be giving. So that's just my take. I was very disappointed.
Commissioner Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. So I think that we first need to understand the grade levels of payment. Absolutely every staff in the city of Deltona deserves to get paid what the qualifications bring. You can't expect me to get the same salary as my boss. And you know, the salaries are depending, so if somebody is here 10 years, you can't expect, unless their qualifications are higher than a person that's been here 10 years, a new person, or they're working at a higher level than that person that's been here 10 years, you can't expect them to make the same salary. And I'm just going based on the different figures that we're seeing here, minimum, midpoint, maximum, and whatever. So this is what I'm confused about, the levels of payment of salaries here in the city of Deltona, because there should be some kind of breakdown as to the different positions and the different levels of experience and education where it comes into play. I had the same position as another person, and I wasn't making the same salary as them because I didn't have a PhD, but even though we did the same work. So a lot of different things work into the base salaries. Everyone should be at a minimum wage, absolutely, but I'm just a little confused as to how we are discussing the salary levels here and how they should be. I'm just a little thrown off.
Well, I'll try to answer that. The pay plan that we came up with is a structure. So if you look at the graph, the line that was the market line, we then put a line below it, 25% to make the minimum, and we put another line above it, 25% to make the maximum. And then if you drew a perpendicular line from the grade at the bottom over to the salary.
Ms. Archer, that's on page 36, if you all want to follow what she's talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. So pretty much every grade is listed along the bottom, and every salary is listed along the side, and then each grade would be one perpendicular line from minimum to midpoint to maximum. And then we wrote those down, those numbers, in a spreadsheet so that it's easy to, you don't have to go to the graph every time.
Does that help, Commissioner, or did you have any more questions for her? Okay. Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, if you actually look, and you said it well, Madam Mayor, there's definitely a challenge here when you have management as high of a gap between the rest of the team. And for me, I mean, we can go through each department. Pretty much that is the challenge here. Management is up top, the rest of the team is in the bottom. At the end of the day, for me, is what are we, or what can we do to fill in this gap? Because I think that's where the challenge is right here, having to fill up this gap. Because I get it, management, it's always going to make a little bit more, education, experience, but the gaps that are in there, even between years, that's just way too much.
Commissioner McCool, you were off and on. Are you on?
I wanted to know how much salary do we have budgeted for the current year that's not filled, an approximation? So, okay, let me slim it down then. We have, I know, right here for a fact, at least two vacant positions that were budgeted last year for this year. One assistant city manager and another, it equals to about $200,000.
Public Works
What do we
Director.
do with, and I can go on, we have a lot of other vacant positions. What are we doing with that money right now?
I have authorized the HR department to fill most of the positions in the city that were being held back in the summer during COVID. So we are in the process of filling them. There are a couple positions that are being held right now, one of them being the assistant city manager, which I plan to put out in the next couple of weeks, now that I've got a sense of, how I want that position to work. The good portion here is that Dr. Cooper set us up very well, and with Ms. Hooper's help, there were approximately, and Ms. Hooper, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there was approximately $600,000 that was set aside to take care of the results of the compensation study. I believe the number that we're looking at right now is about $425,000. Is that right, Ms. Archer?
I don't have it up right now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I wanted to
But
keep it
the last
confidential,
numbers I
so-
saw, we were somewhere in the order of $425,000.
Yes, that's correct. We set aside about $600,000 in the budget for any results of the comp study. And last I looked, which was about a week ago, we have about 30 vacant positions, and that's citywide. So it's not just general fund, it's general fund and the water sewer utility. So citywide.
My point I was getting at is if we had that money to start compensating, right away without taking a big hit to kind of close that gap with these unfilled. So I asked myself, I don't know, that's why I'm asking you, is it more important to bring these wages up to scale immediately or fill those positions? Because it seems like we've been limping along, right, with those. So I know that there's not extra, but there's money here. And what I'm looking at all these vacant positions that were budgeted for to help us with this. And I guess I'm asking, how long is it going to take us to get these staff whole, the levels that they should be?
But the thing is, even if you have the money right now in this budget cycle to bring the people up, it's a reoccurring expense. You have to continue to budget for that and for those vacant positions. And the problem is, I don't know, Mr. Peters, you can answer the question better, but at our pay scale, what are we getting in terms of employees to even fill some of these positions?
We're struggling getting what I would call qualified people. We just had several vacancies in code enforcement. We have one person that we FACE certified, Florida Association Code Enforcement certification. One person was a former police officer, but not FACE certified. The rest of the employees, the rest of the applicants did not meet any of those requirements. So in that particular case, I would make the argument that we were getting substandard applicants. And typically in my past, what we would do is we would bring somebody in at a trainee level with a slightly less salary, get them trained, get them the FACE certification, and then we would bring them up to the minimum as appropriate. But those are things that we have to work out internally in terms of how we handle people that are not qualified versus people who are. But the other important thing is and I can't stress it enough, is these adjustments we're looking at are from min to midpoint. And the goal is that if you've been here working for 7 years, you should be at the midpoint. And what that does is that keeps it from one of the worst morale beating things you can ever have, and that is have an employee that's been here for 5 years. We just adjusted them up to mid-range with 5 years experience, and we hire somebody and they have no experience and they're making the same amount of money. Under the concept we're talking about, that person with 5 years experience would be 5/7 of the way between the min and the midpoint, so that they would be compensated based on their experience here. And likewise, if we have someone who applies from somewhere else who has 5 years experience, let's say as a code officer, then they would be at 5/7 of the way between the minimum and the midpoint, so that they're fairly compensated for their experience, because the more experience we can hire, it's less training that we have to do and that type of thing. So it all works out well. So that's what the goal is, what we're presenting today.
Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah, I definitely agree. We need a merit base over just a time. And I am glad you're bringing back performance appraisals. That's something we really need. I do have a question. Will the commission receive a breakdown of which salaries are given to which employees? And do you do all your salary increases at the same time every year, or is it based on a rolling calendar?
The salary adjustment, and Mr. Adams, you can help me here if I'm incorrect, but I believe the employees get a salary adjustment on their anniversary date. So if you start on January 1st, you would get an adjustment on yeah, come on up.
Increases are all processed on the beginning of the fiscal year.
That's what I thought.
So we do the evaluations all year long, but all the increases are at one time and around October 1. Okay.
Now, with that being said, will the commission get a breakdown at least of department heads and directors as to how much money that was budgeted for that department and how much went to the top tier versus, you know, employees that are not directors or department heads? Because I think that's how some of our money was spent with our previous city manager, where there was another explained huge increase in her salary over a couple years. So would the commission get that breakdown prior to approving the budget?
You're talking about that breakdown from the past before we do this year's budget, or are you talking about what this year's budget would include?
Well, basically what I would like to see is like a department head, such as yourself, if you make X amount of dollars today, how much of an increase are you looking at getting for the next fiscal year? And some of these employees, some of the staff members that are directors that are at, you know, the top of the pay grade, and some are exceeding the top of the pay grade, are you looking to put a freeze on their increases this year, or would you still consider doing a cost of living increase?
Difficult question. My thought is, for instance, this year, cost of living, I believe, is like 1.6, 1.8%. So what I would propose is they would get a 1.6 to 1.8% adjustment for cost of living. But as Ms. Archer has already indicated, in order for us to get to where our minimum pay is at $15 an hour, we need to have something on the order of 4.5% increases to the scales. So that difference between a cost of living 1.6 and a scale adjustment of 4% would mean that effectively you're lowering that person 2.4% versus the scale. So at the time, they would actually reach the level of maximum. In most organizations I worked in, once you achieve maximum or exceed it, you get your raise in a lump sum. It does not get added to your salary, so your salary stays flat. The advantage of that is you don't get the compounding effect. So once you're maxed out, virtually everywhere I've ever worked, you get a lump sum check. Your salary does not change.
Okay, but what I'm saying is more for the directors. Like, say, if you have a director making 110,000 and they're over their max point already, are you going to, for this year, until we get some of the lower level grades brought up to at least the minimum, are you willing to freeze that to generate some extra revenue? Because even if you do 1.6% on 110,000, that's $17,000 per year. That's 17,000 we could put towards, you know, bringing up some of the staff that needs to get up to at least the minimums. Is that something you're willing to consider?
I'm willing to consider.
All right, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. The more I listen, the more I'm confused I'm getting. So you're telling me that because I reached the max on your sheet, I no longer get a raise? Is that what you're saying?
Can you say that one more time?
Because I reached the max of a salary on my grade level, I no longer am eligible for a raise?
That's a difficult question to answer because one of the inherent problems with salaries in general is let's say we have a position that goes from 10,000 to 20,000, and I have an employee that's at 20,000, and we never adjust the pay scale. Then next year that employee would be over the 20,000. However,
Then he moves to a different grade level.
no, ma'am.
I
You do
can
not
answer
move
that.
into a different grade unless your job specification change. For instance, if you were a utility billing clerk 1 and you got promoted to a utility billing clerk 2, then yes, you would get an adjustment in pay and your salary scale would change. One of the inherent problems, and Ms. Archer has it in the report, is if you don't adjust the pay scale, then people will eventually exceed the max. Now, if you adjust the pay scale based on cost of living, and, you know, so let's say that's 1.8%, the 20,000 position will be 20,360 next year. So if somebody's at 20,000, they still had $360 to grow, and then the rest of it would be in a bonus check so that their salary does not exceed 20,360.
So I understand the percentage to bring up is an employee to at least the minimum wage. So what you're saying is that because you are going to be raising a lot of salaries to the minimum wage, the person that's at a higher wage is going to suffer the consequences for your budget. I'm just trying to understand what we're doing here, because you'll be losing staff that are not paid the minimum or even at the mid-range, but you're going to lose staff that gets paid at a higher level because they reach a brick wall. So now they're going to go move to another salary that's going to take them over that wall. So now you're going to lose not only low payment, but high paying staff as well. So I'm just trying to understand, ma'am, you know, how do you do something like that? How do you tell someone,
it's a
sorry, that's it, you know, can't go on the other side? How do you do that?
It's a balance between the value of the job and how much they're paid. So if it's a low-value job that can easily be replaced without too much education, without too much experience, it tops out. Basically, in a good organization, somebody who starts out, like he was saying, a billing clerk, becomes a supervisor, and then they have a whole new pay range to go through. And if people don't progress, if somebody wants to stay a billing clerk, then they're topped out, and they don't have to have any worries about responsibility for other people or any kind of supervisory responsibility. Their value is just the line billing clerk, and there's a certain value that the taxpayers are willing to pay for that.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, so. I got to say this nicely. When we have staff that's at the top or over the top of their line, well, first of all, maybe this will help everybody understand. How did you get to the maximum level? Can you go over again how you did your max, your minimum, your midpoint, and your max, how you hit those levels? Those are a industry standard of those pay grades, right?
They're not really industry, they're local market, the 12 organizations that we looked at.
Right, so say.
So we set the midpoint exactly where people might commute to do the same job.
Okay, so I want to take a position, and we'll say an XYZ position is at its max level. It's at that max level because you guys have looked at the same position over here, here, and here, and here, so you know that this is where it's supposed to be. Correct. So more than likely, somebody who's already up and over that max level, they're probably not going to go too many places because they're already at their max level for that complete area, right? And where I have a problem is when senior management directors are given extremely nice raises when staff isn't. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I have a problem with that. So again, we have to look at the individuals that are the greatest distance away from that minimum and midpoint before we're freaking out about people who are up here over that midpoint, in my own opinion. Again, that's just my own opinion.
I can answer that a little bit.
Yes, please.
The cities that we looked at were from the bargaining agreement for the firefighters. So generally, the supervisory high-level directors are usually recruited from a larger geographic area. So you might go as far as Atlanta or Charlotte, maybe. And we didn't look at those kind of salaries because we were working with the organizations that were listed in the collective bargaining agreement.
Right, and that's fine, but what I look at is, just like Mr. Peters was saying, is I'm not going to hire, obviously when we hire individuals and we hire them for that grade, right? And now we're hiring them at that minimum point, and I hire somebody, and I'm just going to say building customer service, and I hire a building customer service individual at the minimum point. Now I've got somebody that's been in that customer service for, say, 20 years, and now that new person is making more than that person who's been here 20 years. So I understand what you're saying, we've got to get them up to that midpoint. I guess it keeps going back to, and yes, I know it's in writing again, and this is where my brain gets fuzzy. So I understand your numbers, medium, max. How do we get them there? Because when you tell me, and this is the first thing that comes to my brain, and I know it says the little increases over time, but what I say, okay, so we're going to do this over XYZ amount of years, but aren't we in those XYZ years going to still be behind? This is where I get the numbers confused. I guess that would have been good for I'm a visual, so maybe a numbers chart saying, okay, this year, this person goes from here to here to here to here, but aren't they on that year 7 already still going to be behind? Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying, Mayor?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it's really, really hard to, if you really dig into this salary study for the city of Deltona and you really start looking at individual positions, there's no easy fix here. Because you have somebody that's a pay grade 17, that the maximum on a pay grade 17 is $58,389, and they're making over $64,000 at a pay grade 17. And, there's, how do you keep saying that, how are you ever going to get somebody else at a pay grade 17 at $65,000? You're not. And historically, the city of Deltona, and this is, I'm not going to belabor the past managers, whatever, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is when you give everyone a 3% raise across the board, no matter what their position is, and you don't have evaluations and you don't have training, and you keep taking someone that came in at a bottom level, as for example, a floor sweeper, I'm not talking about the city of Deltona, I'm just saying, and every year that person gets another 3% and another 3%, but is provided with no training, and then maybe moved up in another position that they still don't have the training for, and you keep moving people up. If they perform, that's great. But when you have a massive disparity in salaries like you have here, you have so many people under the min, and you have also people that are above the max. It's really, really hard to bring, you're the professional, you know you can do it, but fundamentally, you can't go by individual positions here. To me, when you have somebody that's that much over the max, how do you give them a raise? Like, it's a constant 3% every single year, no matter what. And and it's really bad for the lower level people because it takes incentive away from them to get in, and then we don't provide training. We've cut training. We have to look at our fundamental way we treat employees in this city. And it really needs to be, this is the first salary study that I've seen that's completely transparent and open and shows exactly what people are making, exactly what your range is. This is like, I commend you very much for this. Is very, very good to me. And on the other side of that, Commissioner Sosa, you brought up a point. I'm sorry, Commissioner King, one more sentence and I'll get to you. I just saw you there. About charter officers. In our charter, section 7, I think paragraph 3, the commission sets the salary for the charter officers. They don't automatically get a 3% raise every single year. That's not how it works. We don't do that with the city attorney's office. How did that work with the city manager's office that every year they got a 3% raise? That was not approved by the commission. It was in the contract on that. Then this commission then needs to really sit here before any other contract is done for any charter officers and base it completely on evaluations. Because if that's, again, evaluations to me are at the root of a lot of this and will help. But it's not an easy fix. Commissioner King?
Thank you. I think you've done a great job on the study. Some things I don't understand yet, but I'm working on it. But on a whole, I understand a lot of it, and I think you did a great job. I think we need to remember that this is a composite problem. It's not, we can go down the road and do it like this. There are many different elements that are involved in this process that we've got before us today. Two people, you pick the pay grade. One excels and one does the bare minimum. Both of them get 3.5%. But one gets a merit advancement. If the person who does the bare minimum wants more money, they can do the right thing, which is what? Do a better job at their job. Do a better job doing what they're supposed to be doing. So you get to a point where one person is making more than the other. In my business world, that's fair. That's fair. Not everybody makes the same money all the time. Some people work very hard, and other people don't give a diddly squat. They just do what they have to do to get a paycheck, and that's it. So for anybody to say, well, we just got to make sure that everybody gets the same amount of money, is not the avenue that I think the commission should be going down. When a person wants to make more money, and I can tell you how it was where I used to work, because I had a pay scale. And if you were a journeyman lineman, you started at the bottom of the pay scale as a journeyman lineman, with one exception. And that exception was you spent 4 years in your apprentice program getting to that point. Then you started at the top of this pay scale when you moved up to be a lineman. But those that finished early and became linemen, they worked up the scale until they reached the top pay. What happens now? Well, I'm not making as much money as I can make as a lineman. I have to change my job. I have to become a foreman. I have to become a line foreman. I have to become a working foreman, or whatever the next level up in the foreman classifications are. But this is the same thing here. I mean, when people reach the top of their pay scale and they want more money, they need to come to HR or to their immediate supervisor and say, hey, what can I do now? How can I be trained to go into the next level? If they aren't willing to do that, that's their issue, not ours. That's their issue. If they don't want to advance, it's not up to us to push them into the next position. So I think we've got a great plan here. I want to see the next step. I want to go to the next step here. So I don't think we should be thinking, well, we all have to be making the same. No, we don't. Listen, I'm looking at the pay scale. Honestly, I'm looking at the pay scale. You tell me which one of these 1 through, 75, 74, 75? You tell me which one I'm at. 1? That's right.
We're at pay
That's
scale
right.
number 1. We're 1.
We're at 1. We're at 1.
Use that one. Sorry.
So if I wanted to do something else, guess what I'd have to do? Madam Mayor?
Move up.
I'd have to get your job.
That's right.
Right?
And I'm probably at 1.5.
But that's the way it works.
Exactly.
Out here in the real life world. And for us to sit up here and think that we can tell people, oh, well, we're going to make sure that everybody makes the same amount of money, that can't happen. But I think that it is a travesty for us to have people employed here that are above their pay scale, and they want more money. That shouldn't be, and we need to fix that. And we need to make sure that those who are below their pay scales are up where they need to be. I would like to see the most adequate way and the most efficient way to make that happen. That's the plan I want to see. Because we should not train people to lose them. We should train people to keep them. And they should want to stay, because we should be able to give them the salary and the benefits they need to stay here. And if we need to look hard at the money that we have and see that we can put it to good use as quickly as possible to get everybody up to where they need to be. And then next year in October, this is all implemented and we're moving forward. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have Vice Mayor and Commissioner Sosa, and then we need to go and wrap this up and go to public comment and move on to the next, because it's already a little over 1 hour. Commissioner Sosa?
Do we have a exact number of employees that are under the minimum right now? I haven't gone through the whole sheet. And how much dollar-wise are we missing to get those folks up to minimum?
So on page 70 is a summary. I don't think it counts the individuals, but it says to the minimum only, without addressing compression, I think you need 1.7%, and I don't know what the dollar figure is.
1.7% of the total budget, or?
Of the total budget.
Okay. All right.
To get to the minimum is $197,916 for the adjustments, and the annual payroll to minimum, you've got it 12?
That's right.
So, but the adjustment, new pay adjustments scheduled to minimum is $197,916?
That's right.
Okay. And then to midpoint, it would be $467.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
No.
Vice Mayor.
So I was almost finished when we started talking on other things. So just to sum it up, I'm not saying I want everybody to make the same, but I'm saying that individuals who are at that, are not even at the minimum. I mean, we've got an individual that is $13,000 away from the minimum, which is an embarrassment. We got public servants out there starting in high, very dangerous positions before, at such a ridiculously low wage that it's a wonder they're going across the bridge. They're going across to Sanford, they're going across to Daytona, they're going across to other cities to work. So it's not that I want everybody to make the same, but we need to be at least at that minimum. And yeah, they need to be there. That's why I ask about performance evaluations and at the bear. And where I have a problem is if I have directors, I'm just going to ask, what did directors get a raise this year? What percent?
3, right? 3 like everybody else, right?
In October, they got 3%. To be very candid with you, in my effort to be transparent, all the directors got between, I believe it was 4 and 10% last January.
No, I have a problem with
Over and
that.
above the 3% they got previous October.
Are you talking about this past January?
Pardon me?
This past January or a year ago?
January of 2020.
I got a problem with that. I don't think anybody should get anything over that without us being made aware of that. So I was trying really hard not to put that out there, but to me, that is absolutely ridiculous. So when I'm talking that our customer service professionals, our individuals that are dealing with the public the most, that are paid the least, that's where I have the problem. So that just blows my mind. That should never happen. That should never allowed to be happen. I don't even know how it could happen when, in fact, last year we were on a cut. Wasn't everybody on a tight wallet last year? Weren't we cutting budgets last year? But yet I've got directors getting themselves between 4 and 10%. So I personally don't think anybody over 100K, if those positions are getting raises, I want to know about it. I want to know what these positions are and what those raises are. You know, I know she's like, holy cow. So, and that's just me, especially when I have staff so grossly underpaid in these other positions. So I've been trying to bite my tongue, but I'm sorry, Mr. Peters, I couldn't bite it anymore. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know what we need to do to get the staff, the workers, just like you said, Commissioner, you do have to work, but we do have individuals who have been there and who have been busting their butts, and they're still not even at the minimum. And those are the individuals that haven't even had a chance because, like you're saying, it's just, oh, here's 3%, you go do what you want, and you just sit there on your butt and don't do anything while this person over here is busting their butt picking up your slack, and they're still getting the same amount. So if they're not cutting the slack, and they're not going to cut the slack, get them out of here, because according to the report I just seen from the county, we have a great unemployment rate, so I'm sure there's a lot of people looking for those jobs. I'm going to
Okay.
get off my soapbox, but I don't think any director, if any raise is going to be over the 3% or the threshold, we need to be, at least have transparency and be informed.
Commissioner Sosa, were you on the board again? Yeah. Okay, and then Commissioner King, and then we're going to go to the public.
Sorry. On the 197,000 needed to bring everybody up to the minimum, did that include a lot of those part-time salaries that were way under? Because
It did.
Now, on that there, did we look at how many hours they're actually working to see what the actual difference is?
Right, so that would be like the nitty-gritty of it. This was just a run at, I think I put 50%, so looking at 20 hours a week.
Okay.
But I don't know what they're expected to work.
So if somebody was only working 10 hours a week and they're making, say, 40% of what the minimum was for somebody who would have worked 40 hours a week, so that's kind of off
Right, so
a
that
little bit.
figure's a little bit off, you're right.
So it's skewed. So if we were to take out those part-time and just focus on the full-time,
I'd
what
be
would-
happy to do that, but I don't, I
you don't
can't.
have that one? Okay, because I'd kind of be curious to see what that dollar amount would be.
I can run that for you.
All right, thank you very much.
Commissioner King?
Mr. Peters, I guess I should direct this more to you than anybody else. I would like to probably scrutinize the plan for the merit increases. And I say that because I'm not opposed to merit increases, but I want to know who's supervising the supervisors. Because I've had conversations with employees of our city, and I can tell you there's a lot of them that aren't very happy because they've been passed over, they have been used. Being somebody who's owned horses, they say, ride and put them away wet. That's the way some of our employees feel they've been treated. It would bother me to think that with all that we do here, somewhere rooted in there, we still have that good old boy mentality, and some people get terrible reviews and other people get really good ones. And a lot of times the people who get really good ones are the ones who really should get the bad ones. And the people that have increases don't deserve them, and those who don't get it should have gotten one. In this plan, in this program, do we have some way to have some checks and balances so that those who are doing the evaluations have people checking them, I guess, is what I need to know.
If I can address that. As I alluded to earlier, I was part of putting together the merit-based evaluation process in Altamont Springs. The spreadsheet didn't lie. If you had a department, we had a situation, I'll just give you a straight-up example. In Public Works, under my charge, the average evaluation was a 0.78 out of 1.0. The Parks and Rec Department, the average was 0.92 out of 100. We had a situation where a discussion came out about an employee that works under me versus an employee that works in Parks and Rec. And it got bumped up to the city manager, so he called me over and said, will you explain to this director why your employee got 5.25% increase and his employee, who we agree is equally good, only got a 3.7% increase? And I said, sure. With a 0.78 average, and my good employee got a 0.9, when you look at a bell curve, she's way out on the very narrow end of the bell curve. Conversely, in his department, because everybody is so crunched together, the bell curve looks like this. So his incredible employee was real close to the center, so there wasn't any room for that to be expanded. And so the lesson was, if you gave honest evaluations and you said, you know, you did your job, that is a 0.75, that means that a really good employee could get a very significant merit increase and not break the bank. However, if you want to sit there and tell me that every employee in your department is absolutely beyond the scale incredible, you're not going to get any differentiation between their pay raise that they're all going to get like we do now. They're going to get 3%, whether they did a good job or whether they did a wonderful job. And you know, I've always been about merit increases. I believe in it because to me, there's nothing worse in the world than having an outstanding employee who comes in every day, busts their butt, they do incredible work with these citizens, and then you have somebody who, you know, takes advantage of sick leave, you know, doesn't treat citizens well, this, that, and the other, and they're both going to get 3% pay raises. I just got a real problem with that personally. You know, that person that's incredible and all that. The other thing in terms of accountability is my rule is that when you do an evaluation and you say somebody's outstanding, you got to write a paragraph. And you can't say, Johnny is an incredible employee. No, you got to get specifics. You know, Johnny came up with a program to build Rhode Island, and it resulted in 14 major businesses getting built in the last 3 years. As opposed to somebody on the other spectrum where, you know, we can pretty much count on every Friday and Monday that Jimmy's not going to show up. He's going to take sick time. That's abuse of sick leave. And he's been written up 3 times this year for abusing sick leave. That's an employee that shouldn't even get a pay raise because that's 3 write-ups. So, you know, that's my viewpoint on where we're heading, if y'all keep me in my position. But no, I believe in merit-based evaluations. I believe in them being honest evaluation. I can assure you in the first couple of years, I will read every one of them personally to make sure that they're meeting the high standards that I expect. If somebody's just doing their job, just put meets. You don't need to explain that they're just doing their job. But if they're doing something outstanding, you should be able to document what they did outstanding. You know, I got 23 letters from residents talking about dealing with the customer service rep, and she answered all my questions. She did everything that helped me, and I left a very happy customer. That's good. That's somebody you can give a specific example. You had all these complimentary letters. That says something about the quality of the work they do. So that's my viewpoint. And you know, if y'all keep me here, that's what I'm working toward. The process will start in October. The evaluation form is basically a contract. It spells out expectations. You know, for positions like supervisors, 20% of their score is getting the evaluation done in a timely fashion and accurately and following the process. 20% of supervisors' scores are going to be how they do evaluation. That's how I'm going to keep them accountable for the quality of their evaluation.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no more commissioners on the board, so how many people do we have for public comment? If you can read those, it's 2 minutes. And let's go.
Resident 1776, then Albert Bryant, then Brandy White, then John Vaccaro. 1776, please.
I think it's quite a coincidence that several of us all seem to land on the very same page, very same salary, very same person, very underperforming and very overpaid. But we all just seem to focus right there. And I hear you guys talking about how you have to get these people, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to meet these standards. One thing I want you to just remember is think about the private sector. When states have raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, let's look at what's happened in the private sector in those states. A lot of companies have had to cut positions in order to stay in business. It's just a fact of life. The unique position that government is in, if we look at Washington, D.C., they can just print more fiat currency. You know, we're basically printing money out of thin air that has absolutely nothing to back it. And at the local levels, you guys can just take. You need more money, you'll just take more money from the people. I don't think that is a very fair way to look at it. I think, you know, one thing I think I'd like to hear you guys talking about when it comes to how are we going to do this is where are we going to cut wasteful spending. What wasteful spending can we start looking at in the budget, really taking a hard look at the budget for a change? And what wasteful spending can you cut to find the money to get where you need to be with the salaries, with the salary budget? I don't think that you should just take from the rest of us that, you know, are out here working based on merit. You know, based on, you know, a lot of people based on commission. You don't know. You can't just take from them in order to make up this shortfall. So look for where you can cut waste. And happy birthday, David Sosa.
Thank you, sir.
Albert Bryant, please.
Albert Bryant, Deltona. Am I mistaken? Didn't you say something about Mr. Cooper having $600,000 set aside for this compensation study? Okay, starting off. Got to admit, nice study. Well done. Very informative. Disappointed, though, in some of the other things I've heard up here. And I think Mrs. Bradford's right. I know there's at least 3 of y'all up here that have been up here for a while. And I know I've been at the budget meetings the last 5 years. I see there's a little bit of, you know, connection there and disconnection up there. Because raises, salaries, they're all included in that budget. Whether you want to admit it or not, they are. So if you've done your jobs, really done your jobs, you would have noticed this. For 5 years, you shut your eyes and said, oh, she's doing a great job, when she was stealing from y'all and stealing from us. And yet y'all let it go. Now, I admit, there's a few of y'all up there that didn't have nothing to do with that. But at least 3 of you, stood by and watched that theft go on. Maybe one of y'all got outvoted, but still, you were on the dais at the time. The problem here that I really see is y'all need to wake up and do your damn jobs.
Brandy White, please.
Brandy White, Deltona. It's a lot of information to talk to you guys about in 2 minutes, so I'm just going to choose 2. My first one is regarding that sudden increase in January, which I was surprised hasn't been brought up before now, given the budget and all that. It was mentioned that that should never happen again. Can we actually put that on the agenda to have a vote and discussion on how that should be handled, instead of this just be talked about in a workshop and then forgot about? Because that is something that should have never happened without you guys knowing about it. But regarding this, one thing I noticed specifically is that in all of these comparisons, under the retirement firefighters and severance firefighters, there's nothing. So of course, that brought me to their page, and it talks about how it's comparable and whatnot, but comparable to what? I don't know, because I don't see what we're comparing it to, number one. And number two is, can we get a difference in cost on what it would be to switch to the FRS? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
John Vaccaro, please.
Hey, you guys are doing a good job at trying to manage this because it's been a long time. There's been 2 pay studies. The firefighters have been excluded from the first one. The firefighters requested the first one for all city employees. The second one, we requested 2. As Ms. White has noted, if you go through there, there's very limited information about the firefighters, again. Really not concerned with that. I will say that I appreciate any inclusion after what happened the last time. We did have merit raises historically in Deltona. Part of the negotiations process that I've been involved in was to make the union or the firefighters equal to city employees. We would not get raises as they would. It says in our contract, I wrote that in, that if city employees didn't get it, we would. We dropped it to 3% across the board because there was a misunderstanding in merit raises that the higher end of management was getting most of the 4% raises, and the lower percent were getting around 2 to 3, depending on if you're on a PIP. That's what went away. That's why we went away from merit raises in the first place. So controlling merit raises, God bless you if you can, it's going to be a difficult practice. FRS probably would cost you money because right now we pay 8%. We're looking at paying 11%. FRS requires us only to pay 3%. So we pay a substantially more amount into our pension than people believe. It says in there $400,000. The union gave the city $450,000 of premium tax dollars. We bumped it up this last contract because we knew with the raises, you guys deserve some more money. There's a little confusion in there, and I got 9 seconds, but if you want to know, the $450,000 goes to you to cover benefits and unfunded liabilities. We don't get that money.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, that closes.
Thanks, John.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
as the union, I believe, representing the union, I would actually like to hear what the union has to say about this, if that's allowed.
Mr. Peters?
I was going to explain.
I don't know why he wasn't allowed to speak when they were up here earlier.
We did not provide you the detailed information regarding the firefighters because that is part of a union negotiation. We provided them a copy so they would have an advanced look at it. We gave you enough information to understand generally. When we come back to you, hopefully the second meeting in April, we will have a finalized plan for you all to consider, and you will have more information regarding the firefighters and their situation. I thought Ms. Archer did an incredible job with the firefighters situation. Marsha and I are working on an ordinance to correct some of the issues with the fire pension. We're waiting for some information that we have asked for in the past. As soon as we get that, we will be able to bring forward the ordinance that will modify how our fire pension works. And we'll be able to give you a good accounting of what the cost to the city will be for that adjustment. Okay. Did that answer your question?
No.
Okay.
I am a little disappointed that we weren't given more information in relation to the firefighters, because this was specifically brought on by the firefighters, correct, as they said. And I know they're given, every individual is given 2 minutes, but personally to me, it's just like bringing a staff member up here when we're talking about the union. For us to make adequate decisions, we need to be given this information before it comes before us and it's presented as if it's just a regular individual in the audience. I mean, this is input, you know, so he was just given 2 minutes to give us information, and I'm sure he has a lot more that's probably pertinent to information that we have to make choices on. And if we're going to be presented with information, I prefer myself in the future to have the information ahead of time so we can clearly make a choice and decision and have all that information in front of us. And if they are, and it's not the first time that this has happened, where we're up here discussing something in relation to the firefighter union and they're being presented as a 2-minute come up and speak when they should be a part of a presentation just like anybody else. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Thank you. So, I mean, I don't know if they have more to say, if we can allow them to.
I just have a question on that, because we do not have individual firefighter salaries in this study, do we? You know, this, what we have here, it's a separate, the firefighter portion of it is a separate part? Because there's no page on here except for admin that shows the regular firefighter salaries.
We can provide that information. I was just wanting to give the fire union an opportunity to review it because it is part of collective bargaining. I felt like they needed to have more time. I apologize if you're upset. That's on me. But we will get you that information as soon as we hear from the union that they're okay with what we have presented them.
Okay, Vice Mayor, did you want to have Mr. Vaccaro continue to come up and speak?
I would like to hear what the rest, since we don't have any information on this, I don't know if he has more to add. Mr. Vaccaro, do you have more to add? I would like to hear the rest of what you have to say.
Well, I appreciate that. As you know, you guys have a standing email from me that we can meet at any given time. I don't have any restrictions on, and I can show you anything or provide you any documents that you request. We're not going to challenge the study in any way, shape, or form, but there's things in here that kind of, like Ms. Brandy said, the wages and stuff like that. I don't know the decision-making process that the city used in rank and position. I think that we focused more on starting salary. We didn't make any of the language in the contract for the pay study was derived from the city because all we wanted was a fair pay study. We didn't make any restrictions on it. We didn't add anything to it. We just wanted the original pay study that we were excluded from. The way we've set it up, the minimum wage increase obviously is needed. We don't want to take anything away from city employees, especially because after looking at it, there's quite a, I'm actually surprised about the 10% that you said, like everybody else. I didn't know anything about that. But if you guys have specific questions about this compensation study, we can meet because I don't really have it all with me. But if you guys have a quick or question that you have that is dedicated to numbers, I can give you the answers to those. You know, I don't know where to go with the compensation study. It's 90 pages. There's very little for me to review other than some confusion on our pension plan. So if you guys are clear on premium tax dollars, where they're generated from and what they're used for, it's a very complex thing. I can explain that, but I think it'll be long-winded. So up to you guys.
No, but I would suggest that we go ahead and present the firefighters portion of this when you bring this back and you have more discussion with Ms. Archer. Bring that back as a separate item that we can do a deep dive into that with the paperwork, with what you guys are okay with, and see that you can schedule that before it comes on the agenda for a final review. Because I think that, you know, I would like to see, since, you know, the fire department wanted the compensation study and chose the cities, I think that, you know, we really need to, just as we've done here, we need to have that.
That's another little area you might want to cover. We didn't pick any of the cities.
I thought I was in the workshop when the cities were, you guys recommended certain cities.
We did not recommend a single city. Actually, the city came to us with a list of cities. If you go down and back to your original pay study back in Do you remember when the original one was? Several years ago? So your original pay study, we were trying to be as he keeps saying, as open as possible. The original pay study, the city of Deltona wrote a justification for using specific cities to give city employees raises. We were not included in that pay study, okay? So the city of Deltona wrote basically a form that says these studies meet the city of Deltona's requirements to be used in a pay study. So they wrote a justification article in it. They picked those cities and they provided raises to administrative personnel and city employees based on those cities. What we did is we came back 3 years later, we presented that pay study at negotiations, and we said we want nothing more, nothing less than the justified cities that you use to give yourself raises, and here's the list of cities. We didn't pick any of those cities. We had no input on those cities. We pulled them from your pay study that you gave yourselves raises on, not you, that the city gave themselves raises on, and we used those exact cities. We didn't do anything else. All the other cities that were presented by the finance to us to be used in the pay study were actually in the past pay study as not meeting the requirements to be used in the pay study.
Well, I just remember being in there, and those cities were listed in the agreement, and I don't know how they were picked, but I know they were. But anyway, we have
pay study.
So anyone that wants to meet with Mr. Vaccaro, and then I would suggest meet with the city manager and, you know, have a discussion if you want to do that individually before we bring this back, but we definitely need to bring this portion back and have a separate discussion, because it's too much to just sit here and workshop right now in 5 minutes. It's not fair. It's not fair to the commission. It's not fair to you.
Right, and I would suggest you guys, it's an easy public information request. Pull up your past pay study. That was the requirements for this pay study. And if you're exceeding them or reducing them, then that's probably something you need to look at.
Mr. Peters, can you have the clerk provide us all with a copy of the past pay study? And I'm going to assume you're talking about not the one that, this one, the previous one that they did with the $25,000 one that we tossed, not that one.
Not that one.
The one prior.
Prior
Let's be
pay
clear.
study that raises were, there's a spreadsheet that raises were distributed throughout the city. That's the pay study.
Yes.
I believe he's talking about the pay study that was done prior to the collective bargaining process. Is that correct?
I think so.
This is
Yes.
years, yeah, this is a few years ago.
It was like 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
I can look it up because we have a TA section of to agree to a pay study that
They can
we pulled
find
up.
it.
That's okay, Madam Mayor. What we will do, if we would pull all this information together, we will have it on the agenda for the first meeting in April, so that you all will have all the information well in advance of the first meeting in April, so you can review it, and then we can have a good conversation about it.
Perfect.
Okay. And if you guys have any questions, like I said, I'll come in on a Sunday to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to item B, the commission review of context analysis report and draft strategic plan. Yes, sir. How are you today?
Vice Mayor. Let me just check. Custom is to end at 7:30. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Let's and let's see how far you get till 7:30, and then we will extend the workshop if the commission so desires.
Okay. What I'd like to do, you have two documents in front of you, context analysis version 1B, draft 1B, and strategic plan, draft 1B. In the essence of time, on the context analysis, let me just ask this. If you'll review it, if there are errors or omissions, that's the primary feedback I'd like to have. If I missed something that's important to you, please let me know. Let Camille know. We'll revise it. In the time I have, I'd really like to focus on the strategic plan, if I may. So, you know, this document at this stage, this is a draft. This is a discussion that we have over several periods of time. This is not a final report at all. This is from my initial interviews with you and staff, this is what I've learned. So we together will rewrite this.
You have the PDF, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
It's this, right?
No.
That's
No,
not-
no.
Okay.
I won't be using this anyway.
Okay.
Okay. So again, this is first draft for our beginning discussions, and we'll take whatever time you need to. It reflects what you want to do. What I'm trying to do is make sure we capture the direction you want to take Deltona in. That's the important thing. Are we starting to get where you want to go? The format is there's a big category, strategic focus areas. That's just a box to put stuff in. Under that's the real content, the goals, which is what you want to achieve. Strategies, which are simply ways you could go toward the goals. And then the very indented stuff are objectives. This is very specific work that will actually come back to you in the budget, whatever you approve. So it's the objectives where the stuff really hits the road. So as we go through it, if there's an objective that's not here, that's important to you, you need to tell me. If there's an objective that you really object to that objective, I need to hear that because it's the objectives that really get translated into the budget. Strategies are just nice ways to organize things. In the cattle business, we say don't fall in love with your cows because you might need to sell them. Don't fall in love with your strategies. Strategies may be effective or not. They go. But the objectives are the real key. So what I'd like to do is just very quickly review it, and then, Madam Mayor, in the time that I have, we'll respond to questions, and if we don't. You see, the first area is about trust and public confidence. This is an issue I've heard. We had a public meeting with some folks earlier. I don't know how many were there because it was Facebook live streamed, and I don't know if we had a cast of thousands or not. But, you know, again, that issue was raised. Is there a level of trust between the commission and the public? Does the public have the level of trust it needs? Obviously, this is your currency that you work on. The more you as a body are trusted, the more people are willing to move forward with you, the less community conflict you have, et cetera. There are a lot of ideas in here you see about that, about transparency, engagement. Fiscal stability and viability is an important part of that. People have to believe they're getting good value for their tax dollar. That's a legitimate expectation. People need to believe you're trying to keep them safe. That's the very basic, most basic thing you provide. And clearly, people need to be informed and understand. This is a complex business. It's not simple. Public budgeting is not simple in Florida. There's a lot that you need to understand, and it takes time to get there. So there are specific objectives under those categories of getting there. Strategic focus area 2 is economic growth and diversification. That's been a clear theme from everybody I've talked to, the recognition that this community really needs to grow a commercial base, industrial base. You've obviously made some significant advances, but moving that forward is critical, both for your tax base, to provide the local jobs so folks don't have to commute somewhere else and get that. And this is where a lot of your infrastructure get there. You know, water and sewer are key to that. Your roads are key to that. Clearly, another area you have is ecotourism. In my prior meeting with you, y'all have an major ecotourism strategic plan, has lots of great features. Clearly, that's another economic driver for this community. You've got a center that provides you with a lot of opportunities there. You've got a CRA that allows you to do some things. So those are all things there. Area 3 is community identity and character. This is, I think, probably the most challenging issue for you as you face growth. How do you maintain the identity and character of this community and not simply become an urban blob? You know, folks move to Deltona because they like certain things here, and a wide variety of those. But how do you keep it to be a live, work, play community? How do you keep those distinctive features in terms of your environment, your trails, your water access, et cetera? Again, that's a lot of things. What I would focus on in here is community events and recreation are one of the really key things that people like. They help make it a small town feel. They bring people together. You get to see folks. You get to know folks. There's a lot of plans here that staff would like to do. Obviously, the COVID has sort of put a hiatus on a lot of that stuff this year, but we're moving back toward that. That's really one of the major things. Clearly having, you know, your public facilities. Obviously, code enforcement's an issue in every community. How do you balance that, that you need to do? And clearly, you know, y'all are under a lot of housing pressure. Folks want to move here, and how do you maintain some diversity of housing in the full range of that? You know, this community had some very large lot homes, that's smaller. Have more high density, have that. Getting that diversity right is a trick, And it's, you have a lot of constraints around you on that. But that's really one of the key strategies is how you get the right mix of housing here. Some of that is senior housing, so folks who lived here but don't want to maintain a yard and all that can stay. Some of it is for younger folks who don't want a house yet but want to be able to live here. And so, this is a complex issue. I sympathize with all the challenges about it. It's not easy, but it really is an important strategy. And then area 4 is efficient and effective government. This is really how you divide really good value for the tax dollar. There are lots of things in here about that. Y'all talked about staff training earlier. We've got an emphasis on professional development training. You've clearly had a major discussion tonight about salary and competitiveness. That's noted here. John has a lot of plans for being his engineer and public works background, how to, get some more cost efficiency out of your water, wastewater, and make those more affordable for you. You talk about improving customer service here. You clearly made the point that many of the direct service folks are among the lowest paid. That is true everywhere. It's not a good thing. There used to be, there's an organization in Tampa called the Children's Board of Hillsborough County. And they had this young man, when he answered that phone, you felt like his whole world revolved around you. How can I help you? What can I do for you? And it was such a difference from, this is, these are really important positions. This is what people judge the city on. This is who they interact with. Very few people interact with your city manager or city attorney. These folks are the folks who, they make your reputation or break your reputation, A number of other things in here I won't go over. So that's a very quick summary. I have 10 minutes. I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
All right, Vice Mayor and then Commissioner McCool.
Okay.
The number one thing I thought of when I saw this, where's the community input?
Okay.
So I'm giving this preliminary, yet we didn't have a community meeting to see how do I make a decision without their input?
Okay.
We're talking over here, and I kind of was surprised because I saw it, and I'm like, great, we're talking about transparency. Your second bullet point is to improve community engagement and resident involvement.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yet they're not involved.
We had our first community meeting this afternoon at 4.
Who did?
We did. I was here. And we had it here in the room.
Yep.
And we had some folks
I guess
show
I
up.
missed that email. Used to get those things on my calendar.
If I may address this, we had an issue with regard to the notice for the 4 o'clock meeting because I had indication that a number of you all were planning to attend, so we had to properly notice it, and it was too late. A lot of people on Facebook put out there that it was going to be today. I also reached out to those people privately to point out that we will be having a separate session that will be properly noted for the public to participate. So yes, there were some people here at 4 o'clock today, but our intention is to have a more robust meeting in the future where the public can participate.
I'm a commissioner, and I missed this meeting. It wasn't on my calendar, wasn't informed. I'm not on Facebook. That is not community involvement. So wow. The number one thing that stood out was your opportunities and challenges. When I read through the opportunities and challenges, I'm going, wow, these are things that really need to be higher up on our list. Okay. So I appreciate that you've pointed those out, because to me, some of those opportunities and challenges are like way up there. And I'd like to see what we can do to move those up much higher on the list. I'm still taken back. There was a meeting today at 4.
Commissioner McCool.
I am not familiar, so I'm asking for input. I feel like he's having to rush through this, right, to get under the wire, and I don't want us to do that, because I was here at 4 o'clock, and there are some very good points brought up from the community, right? And I don't want us to do a disservice, because you know, we can't rush through all of this. This is really, really important based on the amount of resident feedback that I have gotten, right, as to what our strategy is, because this ties in, I'm not trying to preach, I was just trying to get my thought out, right? When it comes to our long-term satisfaction and goals, right, as to what we're doing. So I don't know what we do, Madam Mayor, for time. I just don't want us to rush through this. This is too well laid out and thought about, and there are too many points in here. So if you could give me, or us, whatever direction on that.
I think that Mr. Marlowe needs to define what kind of time frame do you want? What are you comfortable with for tonight? And what's the next step? Because I agree, we don't want to do this under the gun, but I'd like to know what is the next step for you?
Okay. Well, let me talk about how I traditionally do this, if I may. Traditionally, I normally have more time with commissions than a 2-hour block. It's often 1 full day or 2 full days, because there's a lot to talk about here. And you need time to think about it, you need time to talk about it, and then you need time to come back after you've had that conversation and have another one. So, you know, if I had my wishes, I would prefer to have, and I understand your schedules, and I'll certainly accommodate them, but I would like to have a significant block of time, at least 4 hours, where we could just sit and talk about this. And I would like that probably to follow an opportunity for a fuller community discussion. So, I mean, I learned a lot tonight. I appreciate those folks who came. They gave a lot of great input, but I'm sure there are a lot of other perspectives that I haven't heard. So if y'all are willing to modify the process some to allow that, I think that is usually a more productive process. You know, I'm doing City of Parkland in 2 or 3 weeks. We're spending Sunday and Monday together, and we just spent a half a day last week together. And after that meeting, we'll spend another half-day week together. And it's important. There's a lot. It just takes time, you know. And I'll be as efficient as I can be. But on the other hand, y'all need time to talk together. Y'all have to come to a concurrence together about this. Y'all have to set the priorities. And it's not fair to ask you to do that in a 15-minute presentation.
Well, it's going to make people angry.
Sure.
It's going to make people angry if we do this and slam it in 15 minutes.
And Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, to add to that point really quickly, the feedback that I got from residents that I've talked to about this, they were excited about talking and being able to provide feedback to the direction of our city. So.
But that's what the public portion is for. There has to be a portion where the commission gets together and sits in like a retreat format and talks about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And not have a set time for public comment in 15 minutes and click your button. It has to be am I wrong?
Yes, ma'am. That's the format. This is almost the worst format. We all on the dais.
Yeah.
You know, we can sit around in a socially distant circle and just talk.
And that's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen. So, I mean, it would be my recommendation, sir, that we find a time and a date acceptable, and I would suggest you, if you're okay with that, 2 or 3 different times. Then would you like to go ahead now, ma'am? Are you done, Commissioner McCool? I am. Commissioner Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. So when I first met with you, the plan was exactly that, wasn't it? That you would meet with the commissioners and then open it up. We would process of, you know, what we felt was our priority in the city, bring it to an open meeting with the community so they can add or take away of what we felt was important. I understand, that's how I understood our conversation. And I think that's the only way that it should be done, sure. Which was done many years ago as well. It was done right here in this room. So I hate to agree with our vice mayor, but I also missed that email about today's meeting, the 4 o'clock meeting. So I'm happy that, you know, you were able to at least get some input from the residents that were here and, get a little head jump on it.
Sure.
But yes, it's my understanding that the idea is to let the community know we're going to have maybe one or two, sit down in the tables and then have them have their input, because this will be nothing without their input.
I agree.
So thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Commissioner. Commissioner Sosa.
Yeah, once again, I'm not sure, I missed the email as well. And if we don't know what's going on, how do we expect the 90,000 residents of Deltona to know what's going on? I think what we need to do is do several, not just one, but several community meetings, schedule them on weekdays, schedule some on weekends, because folks work during weeks, folks work on weekends. We need to get a balance so that we can draw as many people into this process. And I think we need more than a 1 or 2 day notice about when we're going to have this meeting. I mean, we can't be told on Friday that we're going to have it on Monday. I mean, I think we need to plan this out over the course of the next 6 weeks and maybe do at least 3 community meetings at different time slots. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Marlowe isn't at fault at all. We've been planning to have a first session 4 to 5 before the commission workshop. The workshop announcement went out at 5. It said 5:30 was the meeting time, so the 4 o'clock part did not get noticed. Since we did have some notice going out through Facebook and formal channels, so we kept that 1 hour discussion, and he did meet with some people today, but we also realized since we didn't get a chance to put it out to the whole world, we'll do it again. That way more people will have a chance to talk and express their opinions. Thank you.
Yeah, that was not even on the city website. I went through it and I couldn't even find it. Wasn't on the calendar, wasn't anywhere.
Madam Vice Mayor, as it turns out, this is a month that includes 5 Mondays. So we do not have anything scheduled for next Monday. I would recommend that we schedule, provided he's available, for next Monday night, in a workshop format from 5:30 until 9:30, according to his 4-hour schedule. Does that work?
Well, and I think what everybody was asking for, Mr. Peters, is a adequate time to make sure residents are informed, which would mean putting this out on every media outlet, on every sign we have, and letting the residents know. I personally don't want to be sitting up here on the dais. I think we need to be, and I don't know if a week is enough time to put that together, to be honest with you, because I look at this and my first thought was, I don't even want to see any more until I hear from the residents. That was my opinion. I am going to hand this back over to the mayor. Madam Mayor, the floor is yours.
Sir, can I just ask you a couple questions? Because I'm just really frustrated right about now.
Okay.
You would need time to do 2 separate things, correct? A community forum.
Or forums, depending on your choice.
Or forums, multiple forums, specifically for community input, like we did the last time, when whoever said it, we had it right here in the chambers. That is one portion of this plan, of this exercise, correct?
Correct.
So that is on you and the city manager and not the commission, but you to figure out when you're going to have community forums and properly advertise those and have community input. Sure. Option A, that is going to happen, correct, Mr. Peters? You don't have to answer, it's fine. Another option or another element of this is commission input. Commission input where we talk, correct?
Correct.
1 or 2 sessions of us talking. Do you generally do that before you do your community sessions or on either end of your community sessions? What do you generally do?
There's a little bit of overlap. You usually start with the community because you want to have that. But you want to start formulating so that the community can react to that. for example, once we get the strategic plan to say version 2 or something like that, y'all have gone through it, you feel pretty comfortable about it, then what I normally do is we put it out on the web or other mechanisms and let people comment and say, oh, you're missing this, you know, or whatever. And then so you come back and you take that feedback and you modify it then. And that's how we get to a final plan. So you want to start with community, but there's an overlap phase, you know, so that you're starting to hear from the community as you search this, but the community also has time to react to, you know, the documents themselves.
Okay, so in your ideal world, how do we structure this? What is the next step? And I apologize if I was in the back when you said something.
Well, I would propose to work with the manager on setting up, let's just say 3 community forums, one during the week, one on Saturday, and one some other time, just to be respectful of people's schedules, you know, and people feel like at least I had a shot, you know. And I think I'd do those 3 first, and then we'll summarize those, and obviously y'all are, how I work these things is you're welcome to come to them, but I ask you not to speak as an elected official there. Just listen, you know, primarily you're there to listen, you know, as I'm there to listen. But then we'll have a summary. Here's what the community said, da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. You'll have that document. You've got these. And what I could say, since we have these, and I think I believe these are good starting points, I would put them out and let people have them before they come to these community meetings, because they'll say, oh, I didn't think about that, or y'all didn't think about this. You know, Herb, you missed this one. So, you know, these are good, and we're not going to waste these. But I'd make them available to folks, and I have several standard questions I ask in the public meetings, like, how do you want Deltona to be described in the future? What words do you want? What words do you not want to hear about Deltona? What features would you like to have added here? What features do you not want to lose? So we can get feedback on all that. We'll put all that together, and you know, you'll be aware of it. Then we begin the conversations with y'all, and that will move it from 1B to 2A or whatever. Once y'all are pretty comfortable with that document, we put it back out for, you know, a week or so, 10 days, whatever. Any public input, then we come back and you really go into both approving and doing some prioritization within here. There's a lot of stuff here. Your staff can't do it at all. So that takes some time to really think through your priorities and all. So, you know, in reality, I'm probably talking about, you know, probably about 12 hours of time with you in 4-hour blocks.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and let the rest of the commission answer their questions, ask you some questions. Commissioner Sosa, Ramos, Bradford, McCool.
Yeah, actually, I would like to, if everybody's good with next Monday, and not a workshop, but a community meeting. You know, while it's still fresh, everybody's heard about it, everybody has the opportunity. You know, I don't want to wait 4 or 6 weeks and then everybody forgets about it again. You know, while this is still fresh with everybody, I would still like to see not a workshop next Monday, but more of a community meeting.
Is that enough time for you to set up a community meeting for next Monday? That's just my question.
I have to defer that to staff. You know, my agenda said I can walk in and do it 10 minutes from now, but, you know, it's more logistics on their part, so I'll defer to the manager.
It would be one of several. I mean.
One of 3, right?
One of several. So, I mean, while this is fresh, I think a lot of people knew about it. I saw a lot of people on social media today upset they couldn't make it. I think if we at least get the first one as soon as possible and then schedule 2 or 3 more down the road, I think that would be the best process to go.
Okay, and then I think at the end of the meeting, we can discuss what staff has up for that one. You're good, Commissioner Sosa? Yes. Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think he's given us a roadmap. Very simple. I think, first of all, this is a good starting point. Like he said, put it out there for the community. Let the community digest it, marinate it, and then have their discussion within the community, not necessarily us. Once that is done, just bring it back to us, and then we start having our conversations up here in the dais. I think he's given us the roadmap. There's no reason to go back and forth about this.
Vice Mayor?
I think throwing it in a meeting next Monday, this is what we're going to get. I think it needs to be different atmosphere. I mean, can we use the center? Can we get, what do you find people are apt to? Because this is what we get. This is a normal crowd, and this is what I don't want. Nothing against you guys. I want this place packed. I want community residential involvement. And up here, we are viewed as commissioners and mayor and vice mayor, and I want to have that informal and a nice event. I don't want to waste one of my events like this. So I don't know, I mean, I would love to see it at the center. We can get it down, we can talk, we can, you know, or even the old Lakeshore. I don't care, but to me, this is I don't know, we just don't get the crowd here.
Madam Mayor, can I, Commissioner? Vice Mayor?
Please. Yeah, this is a workshop.
I think the bottom line is, and I hear your point, but we should not be, first of all, up here when they're doing a community thing, and we should not be interacting.
Well, the room size is what I'm concerned about.
But I'm saying, if we take this mindset that we're here, then no, just, if you want to come, fine, sit in a corner and just listen. But let them and do the room however you, because wherever you're going to do it, you're always going to miss people out. This is going to be one of 3, whatever that might be, and just move on. Now, do I think Monday might be way too soon? Probably. And then we're going to go back to, that was too soon. We missed one. We should have waited a one. So if we're going to do it, let's just do it right. That's all.
Yeah, and that's my point. I don't want to waste one and have people go, oh, we just had one this week, we're not going to go, nobody showed up. I just want to make it so we get the maximum benefit. Madam Mayor, do you remember, we had a group, who was that helped us with that?
Marilyn Crotty was the first one, did the one here. And then she did one for the sports stadium as well. I believe, Brandy, you were here for that one.
It was
And it was done in the
packed.
chambers, and it was, yeah. And we also, we did one for just the commission. We did kind of a thing with Kathy Till, like a retreat. That was at the Lakeshore Community
Right.
Center. But the original one that we did here was with Marilyn Crotty. And we came and the commission, if anybody came, we did not participate. We just watched. And I think we have the option of having 3 different places. We have the City Hall, we have the center, we have the Lakeshore Community Center to really pretty much,
diversity,
take a bunch of different parts of the city if you want to do that. Anyway, Commissioner McCool, were you good, Vice Mayor? Yeah. Commissioner McCool?
And hearing that and being here today for the one, if it's a community visioning session, I think the community should be able to interact without even our presence, simply because they need to interact with him for unsolicited, unfettered access, right? And then give him time to do that, and then give us time to digest what he's given. I mean, he's gotten this from us already. This is indeed the roadmap, and then set up. But at some juncture, and I don't care which format, at some juncture, we do need to speak with our residents about this. I mean, part of our disconnect is not being able to speak while we're sessioning. So this is your thing, and this is how you do it. But I'm just telling you, the residents should be, I mean, I was here today, but there was 3 of us, right, here, and that was it.
And let me, if I may, just quickly, how most cities do this. After we've had the community meetings, after we've had retreats, after this document's been out and for public review, then it comes back to an actual meeting for adoption. And that's a public meeting, hearing, and people can come up and say, this is the worst plan in the world, don't do it, whatever they want to say. And at that point, you make modifications. You say, I move to strike this line or whatever, So it becomes a formally discussed and adopted document. And I really do encourage that. I mean, you really, at some point, want to raise your hands and say, yes, we're committed to this.
Right.
So that's sort of normally how I do it.
Okay, so quick question, because we're running over. Do you want more time with us this evening? Do you want to go ahead and then set up some retreat formats for us, and then set up your community meetings? Commissioners, do we have consensus on that way to go before we extend the time?
Yeah.
Yes?
Are we on a time schedule to do this? I mean, it seems like we're rushed. There is no time schedule for us to complete this, right?
Can you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry?
Repeat it, it's your question.
I'm just questioning if there is a time schedule when we were supposed to have this done. Is that why we're rushing this process?
We did this process in preparation for the budget. The subsequent problem we now have is we have set up 7 workshops to deal with code enforcement to begin next month. So I'm afraid that we're going to wear the citizens out. And that's why I was trying to push for next Monday night and then come back to you all at a workshop, the first workshop in April, before we get into the series of code enforcement workshops. So that does two things. It will give us potentially 8 hours time, 4 hours each. Second of all, it gets the process done in time for us to be preparing the budget based on what we hear. And then we lead ourselves into the code enforcement discussion, because quite candidly, I'm already getting a lot of pressure to start setting up workshops for animal control. And I have been pushing back on that because, quite frankly, between budget and these workshops, I think you all are going to tire of meetings and seeing me. So I'm trying to work that out. I think we can set up everything for next Monday night and get all the proper advertising out by tomorrow.
I don't know if you want to do that for next Monday night for one of the meetings. That it depends on what you can get out, but I'm just sensing two things. Number one, a sense of rushing the strategic plan. And I know that you want to try to get it done in time for budget. And when this was originally started, code enforcement workshops were not part of the game plan. They were not, they were something that became after the strategic plan. And to me, the strategic plan and the unity of this commission is a priority. The strategic plan and the unity of the commission, as much as we can get, has to be a number one priority. Code enforcement workshops have to take a secondary stance. And if we don't get 10 people to each code enforcement workshop, at least we tried and we had 7 of them. And the same with this. And I think that when the word comes out and people realize that there are more community meetings going, and at every code enforcement workshop, we should be plugging these meetings and vice versa. So, I mean, at least have a flyer there. So I don't think that, I personally am completely against having the strategic plan be rushed. I'm against it. And I don't know if that's a consensus of the commission or not, but I'm against pushing this through 1, 2, 3. If you guys can pull together one meeting for Monday night, this coming Monday, go for it. The commission's out of it anyway. And if you think you can do 2 more that are going to be more in between the workshops for code, that's fine. There has to be time to do that, and I know it's a stretch on staff. I apologize for that. But
Again,
any
I
comments,
defer to you,
commissioners?
your manager.
Mr. Peters, I will give up my April 13 code enforcement meeting so you can fill in one of these meetings.
Are you available, sir? I know you're checking.
Madam Mayor, can we look at our calendars, or, I've got my phone out, but I just want to, can we look at our calendars and have a parameter there?
But he's got to be the one doing the parameters.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that's what I was waiting on his.
For him, yes, sir.
I can do April 13th,
What day was that, Maritza?
Tuesday.
No, but I mean, what day was it? Was it a Monday, Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday?
That's a Tuesday.
Okay. That should give us enough time for notice for April 13th. If you can do one then.
Well, and then we just need to pick a Saturday because, you know, to be fair.
Then
to
pick a
people.
Saturday with Mr. Peters, with staff and everything else, and then after all those are done, we can pick some retreats for us.
I think we need weeknights too. Not everybody can make a Saturday.
No, but it
Yeah,
can be
no,
during the day as
We'd have
well.
Tuesday on the weeknight, the 13th will be a weeknight,
That'll be a community forum.
and there'll be a community
Yeah.
forum. Saturday will be a community forum, and then Mr. Peters wants to go next week, fine. If he doesn't, we'll revise that.
Okay. Commissioner Vasquez, are you still on the board? Are you good? Okay. Commissioner McCool, are you still on the board? No? Okay. All right. Are we clear?
Yes, ma'am. I'm clear.
Mr. Peters, are we clear?
I'm not sure. What I'm hearing is April 13th will be,
Community meeting instead of District 3 code.
right, I understand. And then we're talking about a Saturday?
Yes, you figure a Saturday with him for one community meeting.
Okay. So something like Saturday the 9th or,
They got to figure it out.
No,
Not us.
Saturday is April 10th. I can't do that one. I could do the 17th.
17th?
Yeah.
All right, so Saturday the,
17th.
okay.
Earlier. It was 2 weeks from
All right, so we have 2 meeting dates set, and we'll get the advertisement out, and we'll get the process set up.
Okay, and so you have the 13th and the 17th, and then are you going to do this Monday for one?
Well,
Or would you rather?
you have the availability of April 26th, a Monday that would normally be a workshop if y'all so desired.
Yep. Yep, there it is.
For the community meeting on the 26th?
Does that sound good?
So we
Community
got
meeting on April
Tuesday, April
26th.
13th, Saturday, April 17th, and Monday, April 26th.
So that's 3 community meetings.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
And I think if it's possible to move it to 3 different locations, that's nice, because some folks are just reluctant to come to City Halls. You know, variety of reasons why people choose where they want to go.
Pick the places. We should have one in each different place.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
You said the 17th?
Yes, that's Saturday the 17th. No, is it Saturday the 17th? Yes, for another community meeting.
Okay, and I'm assuming that you're going to the center, because I have something here, an event at the center that day.
You have an event at the center that day?
The center has an event that day.
Okay, no, then I think that you pick another location then.
Yeah.
Here or Lake Shore Community Center, whatever you guys figure out. You guys can.
And the 26th also, you said? Thank you.
Monday, the 26th.
Okay, so that means May, we'll have our retreat.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'll get to negotiate that with your calendars later, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And now let's go to the members of the public. We have anybody signed up to speak, please?
Brandy White and Albert Bryan, please.
Brandy White, Deltona. I'm not going to go over the whole nobody knew about it today thing because we've already went through it. I want to thank Mr. Marlowe, though, for some very thought-provoking questions to us that kind of helped get some of these answers. One thing I wanted to point out is you guys said that good value for your tax dollars is an important thing, and that this is a good start to a roadmap, which it is, but this roadmap has a huge pothole on it right here. And it talks about maintain physical stability and viability. And it says, consider administration fee to Deltona Water. You guys want to pack a room, that's what you put on here. Because you have people already paying their car payment worth of Deltona Water. So now to say that you're considering an administration fee as part of our outlook, you'll pack a room. I think the 3 locations is a great idea. And I also saw on here where it talks about additional fire stations and other public facilities needed to maintain public services. That's one of the things you guys need to really start hammering in your minds when you're talking about more development. It's not just adding a house. It comes with lots of costs. And last I checked, the fire department is still our biggest unfunded liability in this entire city. So more people, more unfunded liability. It's not more revenue, it's more expense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Albert Bryan, Deltona. You know, today at 4 o'clock was classic of this city. I mean, literally just classic of this city. You know how many people there were? Oh, that's right, 3, and that includes 1 commissioner. It's amazing. Unlike Brandy, I'm not willing to let that go. I think that was a farce, to say the least. Now, I commend this guy right here. He did a good job. He really did. He like Brandy said, he threw out some thought-provoking information. Made me think. And you know, I don't like to think. I really don't. But what y'all just did was laughable too. I mean, it really was. Because I'll tell you what, Mr. Peters will tell you, I hate Saturday meetings, I really do. Because I work Saturday all day. But for once, I agree, y'all need to have a Saturday meeting. Maybe you'll get more people in. What was it? Oh, that's right, there was 3 of us. Now, I get there wasn't any advertisement or anything like that, but at least we got to speak. We didn't have any fear of you people. The public was actually speaking. Something that we don't normally really truly get to do because there's too many people scared to come up here and talk to y'all. As you know, I ain't scared of y'all, never have been. I got cojones that big. And it don't bother me to tell y'all that. Now, I'll tell you something. At least one of these meetings, none of y'all need to be there. None of y'all. Just that man right there. You know why? Because he knows how to talk to people.
Thank you, sir.
That closes, Mayor.
Up to the podium, sir, please.
Why don't you guys think about maybe, like, you got this courtyard out here, you have this room, big parking lot. Why don't you get with some of the food trucks, bring the food trucks in, do something like that, really get the community out. That's the kind of thing that'll really bring people out. You know, more so than just, oh, it's another city thing. Oh, I can go eat barbecue? Cool. You know, just think about that, though. Turn it into an event.
Thank you, sir. Okay. City manager, any comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, last comment I have, I would like to make an announcement that the forms to apply for the Charter Review Committee are on the website. If anyone listening, anyone here would like to be on the Charter Review Committee, please go ahead and fill out the form and send it in. And we are adjourned.